Welcome to Unfuck Your Life and Relationships with Anita Astley, psychotherapist and author, and Ryan Rosmann, recording studio owner and music producer. This is a podcast like no other. Sit forward, listen in, and get ready to get unfucked from the inside out. Unfuck your life! Unfuck your life!
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Unfuck Your Life and Relationships with my co-host Ryan. I'm Anita, and we also have Amanda in the studio again. It's always good to get her perspective. Last episode was about sex.
Yeah, that was a good one.
That was a good one. Today we're going to be talking about fetishes. What is a fetish?
What is a fetish?
It is not kink. Okay, so let's talk about that.
Okay.
People often throw this term around. I have a fetish. Fetish is very different to a kink. Now, I hate getting too clinical on my podcast, but we got to define what it is. So, guys, a fetish is when you're attracted to a body part feature, a feature or an object that's traditionally not regarded as sexual.
Okay.
And the other part is it is needed, absolutely needed to have an arousal, an orgasm.
Oh.
Needed. It is not just, it's very different to an admiration.
So you're not just like kind of into it.
No. It's
like
not. It's not.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So there you learned something. One of the things, I hope you learned many things in this podcast today. But so a fetish is something that's considered non-sexual traditionally, but it's needed to have an orgasm.
Or you could have an orgasm just specifically to that thing, maybe like a picture of somebody's feet that Oh,
you're bringing up feet already? We're going to get to that later.
We'll get that later.
Okay, all right. So there's all kinds of theories about why people have fetishes, the origin of fetishes, before I get into all the clinical blah, 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 because I always like to share some real information in this podcast.
Yeah.
But what do you think? Why do you think people have fetishes?
I don't know. Why do...
All right, that's great because I know and I'll share that with you. So there's lots of psychological theories about where do fetishes originate? Like why does one person have one and another person doesn't? Depending on the theory that you subscribe to. And I'm not psychoanalyst, so I don't, I subscribe to some of Freudian stuff. But I do believe people who have fetishes, theorists, they disagree on many aspects, but one aspect they do agree on is that they originate in childhood. Somewhere in your family of origin, some shit happened to you. Yeah. And that's why you have a fetish. But let's be more psychological about it. What happens is I believe fetishes arise when your sexuality is somehow paired unconsciously with that object. Since you brought up feet, and we're going to talk about feet on my Instagram page and foot fetishes. So, for example, I would say, I've had a client who came to me and says, I have a fetish, I have a foot fetish, which is actually called podophilia. It is the most common fetish. I have a foot fetish. Where did I get it from? And then he starts sharing about his childhood and stuff. And then we explore and we discover that when he was really young, before he was aware of his own sexuality consciously, he had a babysitter who would put her foot in his mouth. And I thought, wow, that babysitter totally needs to be fired. But they would play around and, he's a young boy kind of developing. And then he gets, is having an erection and the foot is in the mouth. Wow. And he's not even conscious of it because his sexuality is just developing. So before we were even conscious of what's going on with us, this gets internalized. So foot in mouth, erection, hot chick. Gets paired, and our brain is an amazing thing.
Sure.
So it's ingrained in his unconscious mind, and the two get connected together. They leave an imprint, and then the fetish emerges usually in adolescence. That's that theory, so I subscribe to that theory, but also the experiences I've had with working with people validates that. So that's my belief that they originate in childhood, they come out in adolescence, and they usually last a lifetime. And people will often say, well, is there a cure? I don't ever think of cure in psychology, I think more in terms of management. Like, how do I help you manage this so you don't get into trouble and you don't get arrested or it doesn't become a problem in your life? I don't know. What do you think about that?
I don't have any like sort of specific things like that, so it's hard to relate. But I feel like as long as it's not getting you in trouble, causing significant issues in your relationships, like if you are able to maintain a healthy relationship, then everybody's allowed to have their own things. But I think that, you don't ever want to go into a situation being like, this is causing problems, I want to get cured. It's how can you help me manage it so I can live a normal, healthy life, but still be able to, get excitement and stuff from that. So
and I want to, for people listening to this today, just remember what I said at the beginning of the podcast. There's a big difference between an admiration, and if we're talking about feet, podophilia, than fetish. And again, if you're thinking of, and if you think you have a fetish, you want to ask yourself, does it interfere with your emotional functioning, your social functioning, your vocational functioning, relational functioning, and of course, sexual functioning? Now, you might say vocational functioning. What does that mean? Well, if you are late for work, you're getting fired and losing your job because you'd rather stay home and you have to masturbate to this. I don't know. We'll talk about podophilia because
I'm sure. There's so many other
more
things
in detail. Then you have a problem. You need to get some help. So if it starts to impact parts of your life that I just outlined and you're getting in trouble for it, then you need to get some kind of help for your fetish. If you're not, then enjoy the fetish. That's what I say. But I do want to share that there are 4 types of fetishes. There's a body part fetish, like podophilia. It's a non-traditionally sexualized part. I would never think of the feet as being sexual. Right. So that's a foot fetish. It is a fetish. If you need the foot to get aroused and to have an orgasm. The other one is a body feature. What do you think that would be?
Something non-traditional, like not boobs and butts and things that are people into. Oh.
It's considered a body feature.
Oh, really?
Tattoos, obesity, bodily fluids. You hear that people like being urinated on. Ew, but okay.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. or somebody that's attracted to somebody specifically because their size or shape or color large. Or anything it might be. Or what I feel like it can, as long as it's within reason though, like I would hate to be like, well, I only want to be with a woman or a man because they look very young or anything. Like that's when it can get you in trouble.
We'd have to talk about that. The other one is we probably have heard of. It's a clothing, like a texture, stockings. That's a fetish. I actually work with a couple where he had a stocking fetish. And he could only perform if she would have to wear stockings.
Because of the feelings of it?
Yes, the feelings, the texture, everything. So something must have happened to him in his childhood. That somehow the stocking texture and feel and look was paired with arousal. But we're going to get now back to, before we get to podophilia, textures, leather. People also like textures. They're aroused by different textures.
Right. So, and now we're talking about leather going into like bondage and that stuff. Is that fetish then?
Well, that's part of it. I mean, it's hard to distinguish if it's not interfering. Well, if it's not interfering with your functioning in those areas that we talked about, it's not a fetish. Again, there's a fine line we have to think about when we throw that word around. Is it a fetish? Is it an admiration? Is it just a kink? But fetish is a clinical term. And, I don't want to get too clinical on here because we play around sometimes. And people laugh and joke about fetishes, but I do want to say that it does interfere with people's relationships.
Sure.
And that's why we're here. We're talking about the fucked up relationships that can happen, and we need to unfuck that. And we do need to start with talking about, if you have a fetish, talk to your partner about the fetish. And I get a lot of messages on my Instagram page, Ryan.
Because you do like to Just pictures of your feet, but but normal stuff though.
Well, normal stuff, and what I thought was normal. Okay, this is where it gets very interesting. You ready, Amanda? What I think or thought was normal by a lot of the community out there, the feet lover community, fetish community, said, "Wait a minute, Anita, you have a foot fetish, or what is this with your feet?"
Yeah,
and I have to tell you, it all started very innocently. Now, on Instagram, I don't know you guys on social media, I actually hate taking pictures of myself, selfies, blah, 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 blah. But for my brand, for whatever, for my mission and my passion, what I'm trying to do, I have to put myself out there. So one day I was sitting outside and I thought, oh my God, not another fucking selfie. I hate taking selfies.
Yeah.
So I put my feet in the water. I was by a swimming pool and I posted that picture. And oh my God, I never knew. And I got so many messages about, oh my God, you have the most beautiful feet. And a lot of sexual questions about the feet and admirational comments about my feet and so forth. And I thought, oh, this is so interesting. And I started to do it more. I'm like, well, that's easier than taking a picture of myself sometimes. The feet are pretty simple, right?
Yeah, right.
I did not know what I just unleashed on my Instagram page. And then people started saying, you have, and describing my feet in such a sexual, erotic manner. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is very interesting. So I started to read up on fetishes and then, of course, podophilia more in detail. And I thought, wow, it's amazing to me how things can become so sexualized that I never thought were sexual. And we are all very different. And most of my people are very respectful with their fetish. Because when you talk about something like a fetish, people think everybody, they're so weird. You're so weird. There's something fucked up. And people who have a true fetish feel like they are weirdos.
Sure.
Because it's not a normal sexualized part of the body. But I think, well, why are you a weirdo? Because you have this thing. And then if you think of yourself as a weirdo sexually, it's going to, what we talked about last episode, interfere with your sex life.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if it's not hurting anybody or anything else, like what's the problem? Like, why is anything? Because we decided that, like, as a society, that's what's normal. Like,
well, that's right. Yeah. But it's because there's so much shame around it. I mean, I had a comment from a guy who was 50, and I remember this very well. It was last year. He's 55 years old and he's been living with this fetish. And you guys might think, oh, that's so silly. It's not. He was very depressed over it. He had numerous relationships that didn't work out because it impacted his sexuality so much, which of course then impacted the emotional part of the relationship. He never told her. And then they ended up they broke up. And then he was saying, I'm in a relationship right now and I don't want this to happen to me. I can't believe I'm 55, in his 50s. What do I do with this, Anita? And I had a lot of approaching, of course, with compassion and saying, okay, there's nothing wrong with you. If you go for therapy and you discover that, hey, this is where the fetish originates, it's not my fault, but it's a part of who I am right now. But even if you can't answer the question of why I have this fetish, accept it. And you need to be able to talk to your partner about it in a way that they can understand and help you understand and somehow incorporate it into your sex life.
Yeah. And as long as it, is safe and doesn't hurt anything, like
it doesn't matter.
It's like I had, sorry, Amanda, but I have had relationships with other women before, but there was this one.
You have? Oh my God.
I know. Yeah, earmuffs.
I thought she was the first.
But I was with a girl that wanted to get choked. And I tell you what, I'm not into that.
Yeah.
And I feel like
that is not cool.
If there are things that can like I get like
that
you want to get
you.
Yeah, right. Like you want to get spanked or this or that. Like
feet are not going to kill you.
I'm not into it, but like I can respect it. But yeah, that wasn't for me. And I think that's where like you have to be really careful about like, is it cool? Can you talk about with your partner, or do you really need to maybe talk to somebody because it's gonna really affect your life?
Well, that's like borderline death and life and death.
Yeah,
right? So that's a different issue. But in terms of this gentleman, what ended up happening, to continue sharing the story, is through some, and again, I say I don't do therapy. It's not doing therapy unless you're in my office with me. That's therapy, but I can guide and I can serve as an expert and give you some advice that's non-therapeutic. I have to say that so I don't get fucking sued. But just guiding him and just saying, hey, have a conversation. And what ended up happening, he finally shared with this one woman after 50 years that he had a foot fetish. And she was very accepting about it. And their sexual life actually was really good. And he said it enhanced my sex life actually.
Sure.
It was kind of fun. So I was really happy to hear that. And I'm just sharing that with the listeners here today to say, if this is you, then it's working with this horrible feeling of shame. And we talked about that in our last episode of, we all carry, well, not all of us, but there is some shame with sexuality. And then if you have a fetish, that even makes you more shameful and feeling like you're some kind of weirdo. It doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, I mean, that could create some kind of excitement or something like, you can kind of get a guy off with your feet, or you can do things like, this is stuff like, that may be fun to try or do something like, sorry, man, I don't think I want to do that.
No,
but I feel like that
for everyone.
Yeah, but that could be fun for people to add a little spice or whatever to just like we were talking about last podcast, like you're with somebody for a long time. Sex life can get bored. You got to add some stuff to it.
It can be fun, but I just want to, in thinking about this subject, because people say, well, why do you want to talk about that? What does it matter? It does matter because it is something very private and people are very ashamed of it. And it does impact people's relationships. It also, I don't know if I remember reading last year or saw on the news also, this guy in the subway, of course, New York, he cut a woman's hair. He was sitting next to her and he cut a little bit of her hair off.
Wow.
And he was arrested and put in, jail. But what he really needs is help. He had a hair fetish and he had a history. And when we learned more about him, it's sad, right? He cut a bit of her hair off. And of course she freaked out. I'd freak out too. Dude, what are you doing? This is my hair.
Like can't you just go to a salon and be like, can I sweep up a little bit or something? I mean, that's
an interesting vocation for somebody who has
maybe, but like people take their hair seriously. If somebody cut my hair, I would be mad.
Yeah, but it was kind of sad. He was arrested, put in jail, and I'm reading this and I'm listening to it on the news too, and I'm thinking the guy needs help. He's harmless, but he's obviously crossed the boundaries, right? You can't do that. Again, when it interferes and gets you arrested and you get fired, you definitely have a problem and need to get some help. It's about controlling the fetish and not letting the fetish control you. And again, that would be my role as a therapist if you came to see me, because I don't believe in the cure of your fetish. I believe in helping you manage it so it doesn't get you fired and you don't end up in prison. You don't end up losing your relationships and you have the social stigma. But Amanda, you're making a sad face.
Poor human. Like that's, where it's like, that's obviously that's crossing a line, but that's someone who was not having an understanding and, and needs that. And I'm just thinking about there's so many great wig shops. Like you can order human hair wigs on Amazon. Like there's other things.
Yeah, you got to have compassion for people.
I do.
But I also, obviously he can't do that in this woman. Like I'd be super upset.
Yeah,
same thing.
What are you doing? But it's, I read that and I thought, there's so many people suffering, with things that we are totally unaware of and things that, we laugh at and make fun of. And I think that it's not funny and he doesn't belong in jail or,
It doesn't belong in jail.
He needs help.
Just find a way to help it. Have compassion for people. That's important.
Yeah. And then when I put my feet, and guys, so I just want to make it clear, I don't have a foot fetish. And people will say, well, you like the attention to your feet. I'm like, well, why not? I've actually always hated my feet. I thought they were really ugly.
And so it's empowering you a little bit. Me. And I don't know, your pictures are pretty, you're just kicking it, on a couch or doing whatever. Your picture, your feet with a cup of coffee.
Nobody's sucking on my toes.
Yeah. It's real chill. You could do things a lot crazier.
I totally could. And they've asked me, can you do an OnlyFans page for your feet? I'm like, wow, that passive income would be amazing.
Yeah,
I'm thinking about it, but joking.
I don't know. I feel like sex work and all of that stuff in general, there shouldn't be any sort of negative stigma about that. You got to get it how you got to get it.
Right.
As long as you're respectful and you're not hurting anyone or being hurt by it or being exploited or any of those things.
Yeah, you're free to do that if you want to do that.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful.
Embrace it. So getting back to, what you were talking about, Amanda, and sharing that, I saw your sad face. And I do have compassion for people who have a fetish of some sort and they're very ashamed of it because it does start to impair their ability to function normally in society. And we laugh at it. And again, I want to go back to people who might be thinking they have one and and I've said there's no cure for it. I don't believe there's a cure for it. It's not the way I work. It's all about management. But there are therapists who believe there is a cure. One of the ways some therapists work with it is aversion therapy. And that speaks to and goes in alignment with the theory I talked about earlier, that somewhere in childhood, that your sexuality becomes paired with that object. If we're talking about feet, aversion therapy, very interesting. I think, I could minimize some of that. What do you think it is? Do you have any idea? Have you ever heard of this concept, aversion therapy, Amanda?
Yeah. Well, isn't it exposure to, I'm making an assumption, exposure to like negative exposure to the object, or it would be like.
That's exactly what it is.
Which seems like, we're going to ungay you. It's like,
no.
Like, how broken are they,
I thought you were going to say like shock therapy or something really archaic.
I don't know. Like that, there's also like, okay, it can't impede your life, but so what? It's a part of who you are and what you're into.
No, I don't.
Or does it need to just be managed in a way to make it healthy?
I believe it should be managed in a healthy way that you don't get in trouble, that you're not on the subway and, trying to cut somebody's hair off. But you can manage it in a healthy way.
Yeah.
To me, it's all about management. I love what you're saying.
It just sounds it's so aggressive. I mean, if somebody really wanted it and they were like, I just want this to be done and it's the last straw and they're specifically requesting it.
Yeah.
But other than that.
With that person, I would be more like, okay, well, let's talk about it. Let's try to figure out where it came from, if they remembered. And sometimes in therapy, we can trigger those memories. And okay, now we explored it. We know where it comes from. Let's try to manage it in a healthy way that it doesn't get you arrested. But some aversion therapists would say, no, this person, and for somebody who said, no, absolutely not. I want it to be cured. But it is exactly that. I expose you to something along with that. Say you had podophilia, a fetish of the feet, and you came to me and said, I want aversion therapy. How does it work? I would take maybe an artificial foot or pictures of a foot. That's exactly what it is. And then with the picture of the foot, I would expose you to something foul, like a smell. And the goal and the belief would be that over time, when you see feet, anything related to feet, you would associate that foul smell, and there goes your erection. That's definitely an erection killer.
Sure,
so
but then you hate feet.
Deprogramming.
But then you have this
but you're
negative relationship to,
But you're deprogramming, you're trying to undo and ungay, like you said. And I think that's I don't know. I'm not really for that unless the client wants it. But mine would be more an approach of, okay, it's a part of who you are. How do we embrace it? How do we make, you can actually, if you're, able to talk about it with your partner, how do we incorporate that's a fun part of your sex life?
Sure, yeah. It's like, if it's not hurting anything, like, I think it's important. And I think we have to also figure out if that person is like, oh, I really want to get fixed. Like, is it because you want to change it, or you feel that someone or society, or what is your motivation for feeling so bad about it? Like, maybe it's not aversion therapy. Maybe it's just reframing that, hey, you're not fucked up. You're not weird. You're cool. You're normal. Like everyone else, everyone's into stuff. Like, how do we just make it a part of your life and you start feeling comfortable about it with yourself? The same way if somebody has, maybe like, they were burned and they haven't like a really like kind of like scarring on their chest and like, oh, I don't want someone to see with my shirt off. Well, no, it's who you are. Like, embrace that, and the person you're with should embrace it too. Like,
and I just think it's like when people are like, oh, that's so weird and disgusting. I'm like, what is so disgusting about, we're going to stick to feet because, that's on my page, and I don't have a foot fetish, but I'm just saying I have compassion for my feet-loving followers who admire my feet. I'm like, okay, thanks. I don't find it weird, and they'll thank me and say, oh, thank you for normalizing. And I said, I'm just accepting. Part of my thing is I accept you for who you are.
Sure.
What can become a problem in relationships in which you have a partner who has a sexual fetish is that I start feeling like you just want me for my feet. And then I feel like, that's not a turn on for me. I do it for you, but you just want me. And now I'm feeling used, like my feet are feeling used.
Yeah.
So I've had that happen where the partners feel like, I don't, I've done all of that. And I tried to appease him in this way, but there's other stuff that I want to do. And then I think, okay, well, then you need to share that with him. And how do we find a balance in your sex life that it's not always about the feet? I can get that. I mean, can you imagine if Amanda, and it was always a foot thing, you'd be like, wait a minute, I don't always want to do the foot thing, right?
No, absolutely. Yeah, it can be a part of, but it can't be everything. And especially if it becomes like a routine or something like, all right, now it's time to get this
job
out and now, right.
To be honest with you, I didn't even know what a foot job was. I had to look that up. I'm like, what? I'm like, I'm in my 40s. I don't know what a foot job is.
Yeah, the internet is crazy.
Do you know what a foot job is?
I don't know what a foot job
Oh, Ryan,
really? You've never come across this before?
I'm going to ask Ryan to tell us about what a foot job is. I'm too shy.
I mean, so it's exactly what you think it might be. So just imagine a woman sitting crisscross applesauce.
Okay.
Diego loves this.
Diego, our friend over there recording this,
and
our
then
producer.
maybe your favorite massage lotion or whatever, and the man would then be laying down or sitting, and then you put your feet together around the penis, and you kind of go up and down to
it creates a hole.
Yeah. What
Right?
what can you do?
So feet around the penis,
the penis, going up and down.
But I would see you sitting crisscross applesauce.
No, it's the arch, right? Of the
in between the arch of your feet. So obviously you can't see me. You can't see me moving, putting my feet together. But man, like put your feet together. And then you see that there's a small little gap in between the arch of your feet.
Okay.
And then just imagine putting a penis in between it. Well, it seems like the most comfortable way to do it because then you can see.
No, not crisscross like that.
You start crisscross applesauce, then put your feet together.
We can tell Ryan's done this before.
Oh my God, it absolutely sounds like I have, right? No,
it absolutely sounds like you have.
No, but I saw a video once and I'm like, this is fucking wild. No, I'm honestly, that's not something I'm interested in.
It's okay.
Feet aren't gross.
Amanda's interested.
But I don't love feet.
No, I'm just thinking through the mechanics.
Yeah, like Amanda's like, I want to get a pedicure, this or that. And I'm like, well, if it makes you happy, but I'm not going to look at your feet. I don't really care. As long as they're not gross,
I always think feet are gross. That's why, and I always had a thing with my feet. I never, as a young person, wore open-toe shoes because I thought, my nails, I have toes that are like aliens because they're really long. But then I was like, fuck it. In my 40s, I'm like, I'm wearing open-toe shoes. And then with that picture, it just opened this whole new world to me. I'm like, I fucking love my feet. Thank you guys. So it's been therapeutic for me. But I want to get back to the foot job thing. Okay. I tell you, now I know why the arch is so important. Diego's laughing because I would get all these comments about, Anita, we love your arches. And I'm like, arches?
I never even thought about that.
Wait a minute. And then I'm like, see, we can all learn. I'm learning in my old age. Arches. Now I know why the arches are so important.
Oh, that kind of.
You got it? Okay. Amanda just envisioned
you can. If you're too flat-footed, then you wouldn't have
the tendon right there in the foot, you think about ballet dancers and how they've got that
it's the curve,
the arch,
yeah.
I got it, but I had to Google it. I'm like, now I get why they like the arches.
Yeah.
But I'm not offended by that. People say, that's so great. I'm like, no. I now am appreciating my feet and see them in a different light. Does this give me a foot fetish? Of course not. I'm too old to have a foot
fetish.
Let's
be real. Is that weirder than putting a penis in your mouth? Come on.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Are we gonna that's a more normal thing?
How is that normal?
But you know what I'm saying?
Yes,
and that's something that a lot of us do.
Okay.
It's not normal, Ryan. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's a mouth. Okay.
And I hate to say, let's just normal. We'll have to, redefine what normal means. But I agree with the comment that you're making. But how is that different? How is it different?
Yeah.
Well, because a mouth is warm, wet, and made of the same material a vagina is.
I don't know about that.
I don't know about
the penis is meant to go in one place, and that's the vagina. Unless you're gay, then it goes somewhere else. But I'm just saying,
is it meant? I only mean by not that it's weirder. It's just the mouth. The mouth is in like or being gay. Like then that it's like, well, that makes sense that this is a logical other thing you could do. Yeah. Where like either feet or like having putting your penis between boobs or maybe an elbow. It's a little bit more non-traditional in it. You have to do a little bit more work. Like you have a mouth is self-lubricating in that you don't need to have extra stuff.
I love the way men have a great reason for this.
I know. I'm just saying, like, imagine.
I think if we ask a woman, she might be saying something different.
Maybe a little bit different. Yeah.
Imagine the first blowjob.
Okay, we know why you're selling the blowjob. Okay, Ryan, we know.
I'm just saying,
no man has ever denied him. I don't want a blowjob.
I mean, maybe one, but yeah, that's it. Can I? Yeah.
Wait, go ahead, Amanda.
Yeah.
I was just saying, imagine the first blowjob, right? Like we were saying, like the physiological, like the intention is to get seed where it can be for life, right? Like that's the function.
Right.
But the first time someone was like, hey, let's try this.
Right.
Which might have even been initiated. Like, when was that first moment? And was that weird?
I love thinking about the first blowjob. It's such an amazing thing. Like, what was happening?
Thank you.
And were they surprised?
For these moments.
But like, does it?
Who invented this blowjob? It was probably a man.
And they were like, hey, you know what we did? Oh, that's so weird. Why did you do that? Yeah. Well, we'll try it now. Like, where did that spread throughout humanity?
Yeah. No, and you're right. This culturally defined norms of what our sexuality should look like and what we should do and should not do, and what is considered pathological in terms of a fetish is pathological, meaning it's not normal. It's in the DSM, means if you have a fetish, there's something wrong with you. But again, we go back to if it starts to get you arrested, then you're in trouble and you need to get some help on how to manage it. But I love that. Yeah. Why is a blowjob normal and a fetish is not? Well, Ryan had a great explanation for it, but he's a guy.
Because he likes it.
I don't know if my opinion has as much weight as yours. Yeah.
Today it might not.
I mean,
Diego? Now we're going to get Diego. Diego's a young guy.
No, we don't. He's just a little guy. We don't talk about blowjobs with Diego yet.
But that's a really good point. I bet it was invented by a man or discovered by a guy. Let me see where I can stick this thing.
Maybe not. Maybe it was a woman going, you know what? Let me try this.
Let's try this. Because I'm too,
Yeah, I mean, but how is anything like, I mean, at some point it was probably like if you weren't doing it like missionary, like was it weird or had something like, we can normalize all these
Leave
different stuff.
Leave it to the humans to figure out other ways because we are bored.
Yeah, well, sure, yeah.
Because biologically we know how it's supposed to go, but it doesn't. But that's a really good point. What makes a fetish a fetish? Clinically, we talked about it. I shared it with you guys, but it's true. Like, what makes something normal and abnormal in the bedroom? What is it? And as you said earlier, if it's not hurting anybody and it's consensual, who's anybody to judge that? It's when people, again, have guilt and shame around their sexuality and what their preferences are, we fall into a place of not being content with our sex life, hence our relationships. Like we talked about last week when we talked about sexuality and sex in our relationships. So fetishes, it's okay to have a fetish. You're not a freak. You're not a weirdo. If it starts to interfere with your functioning in society, like you get arrested or your relationships are falling apart, then you do need to go to talk to somebody about it, or you need to talk to, if it's interfering with your relationships, you don't have to see a therapist. Talk to your partner about it and tell them that you have one and share it like a story about anything else that I would share if I had a fetish. Yeah. And sometimes I wish I did have one. It might make for a fun sex life. I'm just saying. But I'm too old to develop one because...
Is there a too old to do something? Because I still sometimes I feel like I might be a little too vanilla in the bedroom sometimes.
Yeah,
and I'm like, can I get something else? I mean, I don't want to get into feet or anything too weird.
Why is that weird? Okay, there you go. You just said feet was weird. Why is it weird? It's not weird.
It's not weird.
It's not weird because you just described how to do a foot job.
Yeah, right.
So.
Well, it doesn't. Okay, well, because it doesn't interest
Very graphically.
me.
Yeah, you're not interested in the feet.
Yeah, and I feel like I'm open to things, but like if it's
vanilla.
I am
pretty vanilla.
I'm sorry. I don't want to be, but like dirty talk makes me feel uncomfortable. Just physiologically feel uncomfortable
let's talk
about it.
This. We're going to analyze Ryan today.
Awesome.
What makes you uncomfortable?
It feels awkward. It really feels awkward, like physiologically. Like I feel like it's the dirty talk it's really weird. What
if Amanda said to you, my fetish is that I absolutely need this dirty talk because I'm not going to have an orgasm. I would figure it out.
Otherwise. Absolutely, I would figure it out for sure. Because if you're with a person that doesn't want to work with you about your fetish, then you're with the wrong person.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I could find a way to be more comfortable about it. But yeah, something about even graphic like words for things like Amanda loves this. I really dislike the word pussy.
I don't like that word either.
And it makes me feel uncomfortable. And she knows it. And she'll like come up to me and like whisper, she's like, pussy. I'm like, oh my God, what the fuck? Like, why are you doing this to me? I would never torture you like this.
You don't even swear.
Yeah. So well, also because she's such like a wholesome, like you look at her, she's Mary Poppins.
She totally is.
But she shouldn't be talking like, but like, and it's not that I feel like if you're into dirty talk in the bedroom, that's great. And like sexting can be like a thing if you're like your long distance thing.
It's a very interesting word.
It feels aggressive and demeaning.
Well, I think it is demeaning because when you say, "Oh, you're being a pussy," you're basically implying that they're not courageous.
I don't like it.
They're cowards. I have to tell you something. I think we need to turn that shit around. I don't know about your pussy. You're not gonna hate. My pussy is the most powerful thing, man. It push children out. So I'm just saying when people say and use it as a derogatory term, I'm like, I'm sorry, what the hell can your penis do? Can it push out a child?
Oh, there's that.
It can't, but my pussy can push that child out.
Why don't women rule the world? Because there's nothing more powerful than your vagina. There's just nothing. It can run the world.
So this whole derogatory use and the meaning of that word
it's men bringing women down.
Very, very offensive because I tell you, my vagina is totally more powerful than your penis because I can push and women do. We push children out of that thing, and I don't think your penis can do that. So I hate that word, but I find it. That was a side note. Diego's laughing. Diego, it is the most powerful thing in this world. You know that.
Poor Diego.
Diego's only like 10. Sorry, Diego. He's getting a lesson in fetishes and sex and now pussies. Anyway, so I hate...
poor Diego.
It is not it should not be a derogatory term. It should be empowering. But getting back to what you're saying, so it's very sensitive for you.
It is.
And then, so what does it make you feel?
Physically uncomfortable a little bit. It makes me feel very awkward and weird. And any sort of like... I mean, a little like, oh, this feels good in bed kind of thing. But if it would be like, oh, fuck me, this, that, I'm like, I don't have any desire for that at all. Especially when it becomes sort of like aggressive or demeaning or what is it? Dominating, right? You know, those things. But like, I wouldn't be like, I think like rough sex or any of those things also I don't have any interest in.
You're like gentle.
I feel like women should be respected and sex should be intimate. Like I'm not really super interested in like sex from behind because I want to be more connected with the person.
You want to see.
Yeah. And also I want to look at the woman,
eye contact. And it's interesting because some people during that process will avoid the eyes because they don't want to look at each other, and often the eyes are closed.
Yeah, which I mean, I think I'm not going to sit there like the whole time and make crazy eye contact. That's kind of weird. Yeah. But also I feel like
that's funny to think about though. I'm going to do that next time.
Also I just feel like if a woman is on top, I feel like it's just a better view. Like there's just more stuff to look at.
So women on
touch
top,
and feel
blowjobs. I can see this perspective, the male perspective here.
And although I have the specific things that I'm into, it's not that if Amanda wanted to do something else, I'd be happy to. But I think when we're even going back with like last week, like knowing who you are and what you are, and like I'm like, hey, this is kind of what I like, and if we can incorporate this,
yes,
and in that. I would appreciate it. And then we can do some stuff for you and we can all be happy, but let's just communicate about it.
Yeah, you have to talk about it. And what you're saying, the important part of what you're saying, lots of things to unpack and lots of important points you're making, Ryan, is that if this was her fetish, you would want to know about it. You would try to accommodate it.
Mm-hmm.
And on your side, Amanda, from what you've shared, is that you would be like, okay, it doesn't always have to be about my fetish as long as you accept it, kind of understand it, and the role that it plays in our sexual life, then we can do other things that are mutually satisfying. And that's one of the areas that becomes problematic when there is a fetish that the partner who doesn't have the fetish feels like it's all about your satisfaction and your fetish. What about what I need sexually? That's where it can become problematic. And, this connects to what we talked about in our last episode, that if you have a healthy, honest conversation with your partner about it, then we can find the balance sexually. But again, own your fetish. If it's not interfering with your functioning, then talk about it with your partner. And as a society, oh my God, we are so fucking repressed and we got to unfuck the shame around all this stuff. Like, it's so shameful. I think there's a lot of other things that people do that are way more shameful than have a foot fetish. People who share with me, I'm like, some people are doing lots of crazy shit they should be arrested for that shit. Never mind.
Like there's evidently a guy in Milwaukee that drives around jerking off. I've not experienced it, but I've seen it on multiple people on social media posted in the last few years, like talking about this, that people know about this.
Has he been arrested?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't know if it's true, but I've seen enough people talk about it.
Yeah.
But even if it's not, like, don't.
Well, it's a type of voyeurism, right? Like you need to see my junk. Like, no, don't know. Women tend not to do that. But getting back to the fetish.
Sorry.
No, so don't be sorry. I want to make the point that it's mostly men who have fetishes. If we look at the data, this leads into what you're saying, guys. Women we just don't need to do that.
Is it physiological, or is it because men do talk about it more? Like, what is it that makes that?
There's a biology
thing?
We're just hardwired that way. I don't know. Amanda, what do you think? I think we are just not that way. And men, maybe it goes back to our hunting and gathering. Like, this is a form of hunting for some men.
Sure.
And we're gathering. I don't know, but women just don't do fucked up shit like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
The men are kind of fucked up like that. Not all of you, so don't get offended. But it's true. We hear and learn, the data too. Again, we go back to, if we look at it, fetishes, men report having more fetishes than women. But you could argue, are women too shy and embarrassed to say that they have one? Because traditionally they're not supposed to be aggressive in the bedroom.
Yeah, that was kind of the point.
Right? We talked about it last week.
Repressed.
We're supposed to be repressed and let the act happen to us rather than engage and say, hey, no, we kind of like this. And women do have fetishes, by the way. I've had DMs on my Insta from women who say, yeah, I have a fetish and I love your feet. And there's less of that. But then I think, I wonder if it's just, we're just more repressed and ashamed to admit that we like certain things because, again, we're just supposed to lie there and let it happen to us.
Right.
Traditionally. And
yeah, I feel like that, like women, even if you're talking about social media, like there's probably not women that are like sending unsolicited pictures of their genitalia where evidently like dick pics are a thing.
They are.
I've never met anybody as a guy that's talked about sending.
So have you?
Them.
I'm assuming you've never done
I
that.
know.
You're way too respectful.
No, I wouldn't. I don't even think I've sent one on request.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if I'd feel. If you really wanted me to, but
I have to tell you that on my Instagram, I have had the dick pics, like lots of dick pics.
Yeah.
And I've even had videos. And now my thing is, guys, I never open any pictures because of that now. And literally the first time I got one, I was innocently just going through my DMs because I do try to respond to all of them. And boom, there's a dick. I just want to say, Diego's laughing. There is nothing attractive about a dick when you're not in the moment.
Yeah, don't.
Has it ever worked once? Has anyone ever sent a dick pic and gotten a good response to the point where like now like, oh, how'd you guys meet? Well, I sent her a picture of my dick unsolicited and then we met up for coffee and we've been married for 10 years. Like, no.
Thank you.
No.
That's exactly what it made me think, dude. if you really wanted to have a relationship with me or impress me, this is not the way to do it. I'm not all gaga goo goo over you now because I've seen your hard dick, or I've even had videos where they're, ejaculate everywhere. And I'm just like, block, you're disgusting. No, yeah, and thank you, Ryan, for making that point.
Yeah.
I didn't go all crazy and wanted to get his number and go on a date.
What's the behind a dick pic? Because I can't imagine that someone's mindset? Someone is really thinking like, I'm going to send it to this woman and then she's going to
want to
be receptive.
Yes.
So there has to be some other payoff for it, right? So what is that payoff?
It's a form of voyeurism. Like that's what it is. And, we're getting a little bit off topic, but it's related. It's like cowards behind keyboards. Like I bet if I met that person who sent me the dick pic in person, they would not have enough guts to behave like that at all. But now because we have this medium that we can just do this, and we don't have to be accountable for it because we're, unknown, kind of hiding behind the keyboard and sending all kinds of shit. Not enough balls to do it in front of me, I bet you, if you're standing, literally. I don't want to see balls.
There's not a lot of people just like being like, oh, hey, here's my dick. Yeah, like out in public.
Exactly. On your first date. Oh, by the way, hi. Shake your hands with my dick or my boob. It just doesn't happen. I just had the visual.
Would you like to shake my dick? Oh my gosh.
The Nathan move and
What is that? Sorry.
Oh, just throwing your dick down on the table.
Yeah. I mean, that's what guys sometimes do. Like,
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah.
That was really funny. Thank you.
Not to get too off topic.
Don't. Let's not try that on the first date. Take your dick out, right? But I'm just saying you would never do that on a first date. But apparently on social media, that's acceptable. And then nobody's going to fall madly in love with you because you sent a dick picture to some woman that you like. But again, I want to get back to what we were talking about, fetishes. And please, if you're listening to this, you should, and you didn't listen to our last podcast, you should. It's related. And I think, if anything, the takeaway today is if you have a fetish, it's okay. You're not some weirdo. Just try, part of getting some help would be to manage it so you don't get arrested and get yourself in trouble. Again, vocational, emotional, social, sexual, relational, functioning. If it interferes with those things, then you do need to get some help. If not, and you're ashamed of it, work on the shame. You can by yourself or with a friend or with a therapist, but talk to your partner if you have one. And then it could possibly enhance your life and absolutely will take some of the shame away. Thank you for sharing your story, Ryan.
Gosh,
and thank you, Amanda.
I'm just sitting here
sorry, Diego, that you had to listen to our pussy talk.
Yeah. Like, did I say too much?
No. As I say, this podcast is about real and being raw. And sometimes we go a little bit off topic. But for me, it's all related because we got to unfuck our life and relationships from the inside out. Bye, guys. See you next time.
Unfuck Your Life and Relationships was recorded at High Five Studio in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Unfuck your life! Unfuck your life!